Eye Contact, a Mark Manning Mystery, Book 2. Author, Michael Kraft. Publisher, Open Road Integrated Media, New York. Narrator, Eric Ost. Only a few minutes later, on the top floor of the Journal building, Lucille Herring boots up her computer terminal in Nathan Kane's unlit outer offices. When she arrived, she caught the security guard dozing at his post and told him she'd seen men shot for less. She was joking, but never cracked a smile, and the guard fumbled with his key to admit her. While passing through the door, she asked, "Did the colonel spend the night in his quarters?" "No, ma'am. He left the tower before midnight." "Good." She gave the guard a curt nod, shut the door behind her, and marched straight through the labyrinth of quiet rooms to her desk. It will still be nearly 2 hours before the rest of the staff arrives, but she needs all the time she can get. There's work to be done. Her computer clicks and whirs, displaying cryptic startup messages on its monitor. It pauses now and then for passwords, like a dog begging for scraps of breakfast. When she enters the codes, the machine churns onward, gobbling the information from her fingertips. While waiting for this electronic feeding frenzy to digest itself, she sits erect in her chair, drumming the desk. Shafts of orange morning light angle in through the room's windows, partly obscured by the hulking cabinetry that houses yet another phase of the office's newly installed computer power. At last, the desired prompt appears on the screen. What is her command? Though she knows she is alone, she instinctively checks over both shoulders before proceeding. She unbuttons the breast pocket of her pleated jacket and fishes out a little key, which she uses to unlock the file drawer of her desk. From the drawer, she removes an unlabeled folder and spreads it open on the desk. Inside is a stiff cardboard envelope, and inside, that is an unlabeled diskette. She slides the disk into her A drive, types a command, and hits the enter key. As the computer begins to churn, Lucille Herring holds her breath. Outside the window, an unmanned scaffold winches into view, hauling more equipment roofward. Then a message appears on the computer screen. "Welcome, Mr. Kane." Lucille Herring smiles. She's in. By mid-afternoon, Manning is seated back at his desk in the Journal's city room. He's been away only a day and a half, but there's a pile of pink slips by his phone and enough voicemail to crash the system. He's barely made a dent in all this when Daryl waltzes into the cubicle with another fistful of messages. My, gorgeous," he coos. "Aren't we casual today? Tennis, anyone?" Manning didn't think to pack his office uniform for the trip to Door County, and he didn't want to take time to stop at home and change while driving back into the city. He wears a white camp shirt, chinos, and topsiders. He tells Daryl, "Not that it's any of your business, but I was on an overnight assignment." "Where?" Manning grabs the sheaf of pink slips. "Wisconsin." He tries to organize the mess of notes, diskettes, files, and Word folders that clutter his desk. "Huh? For Christ's sake, Daryl, it's a state north of here." He looks up from the rubble. "They make cheese." "Oops," Daryl flashes the whites of his eyes. "Sounds like Buana got up on wrong side of the bed this morning." Manning exhales. He swivels his chair to face the copyboy. "Sorry, Daryl. As a matter of fact, I didn't sleep well. The Nolan and Zarnick stories are getting more convoluted, raising lots of new questions, but no answers. What's more," he hesitates, then stops. He was going to mention his car's door ding, but that would sound absurdly trivial. "Never mind. This hasn't been my best day." Daryl knows that Manning is investigating Zarnick's identity. The reporter confided that much of the mystery to him on Monday and asked him to do some research in the Journal's morgue. Responding now to Manning's despondency, Daryl moves behind the chair and places both hands on Manning's shoulders. His tone is instantly soothing. There, sugar. You just keep digging. Keep your eye on the coveted brass bird." "Thanks." Manning reaches up to pat one of Daryl's hands. "Sorry to say the Partridge Committee would be singularly unimpressed with this investigation." Daryl steps in front of Manning and parks on the edge of the desk. What have you got so far? Manning has other things to do right now, but a summary might help focus his thoughts. He tells Daryl, Zarnick is a fraud. But who is he? And why? I've learned that he's probably a professional actor, and that he may have some connection with the Christian family crusade, but there's nothing to suggest a motive for his claimed astronomical discovery, which is bunk. The Pentagon has expressed interest in his research methods, which are non-existent, fearing that the time lag between his announced discovery and its independent verification may open a window of opportunity for something menacing. But what? I see what you mean, love. Plenty of questions, damn few answers. Not yet, at least. What really intrigues me, though, is the possible link between Zarnick's ruse and Cliff Nolan's murder. I couldn't help sensing a connection from the very moment when I discovered Cliff's body. His laptop computer was missing and has never been found. He was working on a story when he was shot, and I have every reason to believe that it would have exposed Zarnick as a fraud. The woman next door to Cliff said that he was playing loud music on the night he was killed, and in fact, when I found his body 2 nights later, the stereo system was still humming, loudly cranked to the max. I wondered what music was playing when Cliff was killed, and I just got an answer. Manning plucks one of the message slips from his desk. Daryl leans forward, but can't read it. Manning tells him, Jim, my detective friend at headquarters, left word that the last CD played on Cliff's stereo had no fingerprints on it. It was a recording of the Verdi Requiem. I should have guessed. Daryl's mouth hangs agape as he ponders this revelation. Sorry, he says after a moment. I don't follow you at all. What was playing? Manning repeats. The Verdi Requiem, the traditional Catholic Mass for the dead, is set to music by Giuseppe Verdi. It was a 19th century composer of grand opera and other large-scale works. The Requiem is one of his most enduring and popular pieces, probably the most bombastic. It's a very long setting of the Mass, requiring a huge orchestra and chorus. The point is, I don't know anyone who sits down and actually listens to the whole thing. The part that everyone likes is the Dies Irae section near the beginning. It opens with 4 explosive bursts of sound depicting the wrath of doomsday. Played loudly enough, those blasts could easily mask 4 gunshots. Cliff had 4 bullets in his back. Okay, says Daryl. Having never heard the music, he'll have to take Manning at his word. But there were no fingerprints on the disc. Exactly. CDs are fingerprint magnets. That disc should have been covered with prints. Cliff's prints, the fact that there were none at all, means that the disc was almost certainly handled, cleaned, and played by the killer, not by Cliff. Daryl nods. And that brings us back to the central question. Who killed Nolan? Manning inches his chair closer to Daryl, who leans forward to listen. With lowered voice, Manning tells him, I now have 5 possible suspects. First, there's the actor who is posing as Zarnick. His obvious motive for murder would be to avoid exposure as a fraud by Cliff, but why the whole ruse in the first place? Second, there's Lucille Herring, who works up at Nathan Kane's office on loan from the Pentagon. She's a computer whiz, with access to drafts to report stories even as they're being written. The Pentagon may have some involvement in the Zarnick scam, and Herring would have known that Cliff was ready to blow the whistle. What's more, she's a lesbian, and Cliff had threatened to expose her to the military brass, which would be the end of her career. So she was plenty motivated. Daryl asked the obvious question. Have you talked to her? I've been trying, Manning assures him, but we can't seem to connect. I got another voicemail message from her today. She can't meet tonight or tomorrow night because she's terribly busy with an important project. It sounds like a runaround. I should probably just confront her upstairs in her office during the day, but I don't want Nathan Kane to get wind of this till I have some firm evidence. A wise precaution, Daryl agrees. Who else? Third on my list is Carl Crichton, a prominent local attorney who was possibly being extorted by Cliff. He apparently has some connection with both Zarnick and the Christian family crusade. But what's their role in all this? Fourth is Dora Lee Fields, Cliff's next-door neighbor. A real character. She's an Elvis impersonator, a CFC member, and a pistol-packing redneck who threatened to kill Cliff for some peace and quiet. She couldn't stand his loud music, and it was loudest on the night he died. She may be trying to divert suspicion from herself, but she told me that Cliff had a visitor that night, a tall man with a limp. And that brings us to suspect number 5, Victor Utley, Chicago's cultural liaison to the world. He was at Saturday's party. That tall, effeminate number with a limp from a recent rollerblading mishap. He's the one responsible for all those expensive ads that have been running this week, congratulating Zarnick. So he has an interest in Zarnick's discovery, which we know to be a sham. What's more, he's well connected in the theater world, and we're probably sure that Zarnick is an actor. That might be an important connection, which is why I asked you to do some research on Victor Utley. Manning glides his chair back a few inches, dropping his arms to his sides. And that, I'm afraid, is all I've got. Daryl taps one of the manila folders on Manning's desk. You've got a morgue file on Utley. I dug out everything I could, but there wasn't much. A couple of tepid acting reviews, a Metro story about his appointment to the mayor's office, a few mugshots from his agency. As Manning thumbs through the folder, Daryl adds, You've also got a shitload of messages from him. He's antsy to talk to you, in fact. Daryl plucks one of the slips and dangles it in front of Manning's face. He'll be stopping by the office this afternoon, right about now, hoping to catch you. Daryl has barely finished his sentence when David Bosch pops into the cubicle. Hey, Mark. He's winded and grinning. Guess who's out front? Daryl picks lint from his sleeve, showing no interest in David's news. At the same time, he notes with great interest that David's casual attire is virtually identical to Manning's. Okay, Manning tells David. I'll bite. Who's out front? Victor Utley. I happened to hear him tell the receptionist that you were expecting him, so I said I'd run back to get you. Damn, what a coincidence, says Manning, straight-faced. This prompts a chortle from Daryl, who's busy admiring the contour of David's firm buttocks. When David notices the direction of Daryl's gaze, Daryl looks up to tell him, Nice pants. Oh, thanks. Then David tells Manning, So, grab your notebook. Obediently, Manning rises, picking up his notes, his calendar, and his Mont Blanc. Noticing that Daryl's gaze has returned to David's pants, he says without inflection, Stop that! Oblivious to the subtopic, David asks Manning, Mind if I tag along? I insist, Manning tells him, clapping an arm over his shoulder. After all, you're part of the team. And they start off down the aisle together, affording Daryl a nice view of both backsides. Daryl calls after them. Oh, David! He turns. Yeah? How was Wisconsin? Sweet, man. Daryl smiles, rises, and strolls off in the opposite direction toward the heart of the newsroom, where he's late for switchboard duty. Manning and David escort Victor Utley into one of the little conference rooms that surround the reception area outside the editorial offices. It's a stark closet of a room with white, undecorated walls, badly scuffed by chairs on casters, clumped around a center table. Have a seat and get comfortable, Manning tells Utley, adding, or at least try to. Manning shrugs an apology for the tight quarters, shuts the door, then joins David and their guest around the table. Utley winces as he sits, trying to find a comfortable space for his lame leg. Thank you, Mark, he says, for seeing me without an appointment. His lanky frame and long features appear drawn and emaciated in this sterile environment, which is too brightly lit. Seemingly from nowhere, Manning replies, I'm sorry I've been so hard to reach, David, and I have been working on a story that took us out of town. Have you met, by the way? They mention having seen each other at Saturday's party, shaking hands to make it official. As they reach across the table, their chairs shift position, banging the walls. So, Victor, Manning continues, flipping open his pad, what is it that you've needed to see me about? Utley hesitates through a skittish laugh. He says, Actually, I understand from Neil that you've been wanting to see me. He pulls one of his skinny cigarettes from an inside jacket pocket and lights it, not bothering with the holder, not bothering to ask if anyone minds. Come on, Victor. You're first. What's this about? I spotted you downstairs in the lobby Monday morning. He sucks his first drag, then blows the smoke sideways over his shoulder. I wondered if you'd seen the ads we ran from the mayor's office congratulating Professor Zarnick. Manning snorts. They were hard to miss, and while the journal appreciates the revenue, I must admit that the ads baffled me. From the mayor's perspective, what's the point? To pump up the prestige of the city? Precisely, says Utley, suddenly energized, fluttering both hands. A city's self-perception is a tenuous, gossamer thing. The orange dot of his cigarette traces circles in the air. We owe it to the citizens of Chicago to seize any opportunity to remind them that they inhabit a miraculous urban playground of culture and science. David stifles a laugh, catching a glance from Utley. He pretends to cough, shooing smoke with his hands. Utley looks about for an ashtray, but there is none. Only a lipstick-stained styrofoam cup left on the table from a previous meeting. There's an inch of coffee in it, to which Utley adds his cigarette, extinguishing it with a hiss. Thank you, David mumbles through another fiend cough. Anyway, Utley continues, I just wanted to make sure you had seen the ads. Plus, the mayor asked me to convey his personal thanks to you for breaking the story and helping to spread the city's good name. He smiles. Well, do express my gratitude to the mayor, says Manning, aping the smile. This doesn't make sense, though. Utley could have simply phoned the message or sent a card, maybe a plant. Why all this skulking about this urgent face-to-face meeting? Utley's behavior has been more typical of an informant, a source, who's about to impart a hot tip. But this is nothing, Manning tells him. I was only doing my job. Your humility, says Utley, is a credit to your profession. Oh, brother. I was wondering, Victor, if perhaps the mayor's office could be of assistance in facilitating some background research for another story I have planned. It has nothing to do with Zarnick. We'll be happy to try. Is this the matter that Neil mentioned on the phone yesterday, the laser show? David looks to Manny with a quizzical blink, having never heard of this story. That's right, Manny tells Utley. Then he explains to David. At the end of Saturday night's human rights rally, some new laser technology will be used to display a huge pink triangle over the stadium. Special projectors are being installed on top of the Journal building and 2 other towers. The Sky Show will continue every night for a year, throughout the run of Celebration 2000. Nothing has been published yet about Saturday's finale. It's being kept as a surprise, but once people get a look at it, there's bound to be widespread interest on how it works. So, Manning turns to Utley. I'd like to arrange access to one or more of the projection sites to get a first-hand look at the equipment. He opens his date book. It is Wednesday. The week is half gone already. I'd like to do some snooping by Friday. Any later, it's anyone's story. Utley tells Manning, one of the projectors is on top of this building. Why don't you just hop on an elevator and take a look? David looks from Utley to Manning. It's a logical suggestion. Manning tells them, let's just say I have my reasons. Can you help me? Probably. I'll let you know by tomorrow. I appreciate it, Victor. Manning makes a note in his calendar and closes it. While capping his pen, he thinks of something. Uncapping the pen again, he flips open his steno pad. Adopting a chatty conversational tone, he says to Utley, even without the laser spectacle, it sounds as if the opening ceremonies on Saturday should be sensational. Neil tells me you've had a hand in the planning, Victor. He puffs with pride. That's putting it mildly. The mayor's office is keenly aware that Saturday's program will affect the world's perception of this city for years to come. Planning is crucial, of course, and I've tried to keep an eye on the committees. I've always been something of a music buff, so I'm especially interested in that aspect of the festival. I understand there's a possible glitch in lining up the 3 tenors. He pauses, deciding to gamble, then asks, is it true that Paganini may cancel? Naming not a reigning tenor, but a long-dead violinist. That's just rumor, Utley assures him. All systems are go. He'll be here. Oh, good, says Manning, adding with a wry understatement. I wouldn't want to miss that. He jots a brief note telling himself this guy wouldn't know Bach from Bruckner. If he could mistake Paganini for Pavarotti, he surely lacks sufficient musical knowledge to synchronize 4 gunshots to the dies irae of Verdi's Requiem. Victor Utley did not kill Cliff Nolan, as suspected. Dorley Fields may have invented the man with a limp. Manning closes his notes and pockets his pen. The meeting, it seems, is finished. Victor rises from his seat, extending his hand. I'm glad we finally connected. If there's anything else... Actually, Manning interrupts, there is one other bit of unrelated business I want to discuss with you. Oh! Victor settles into his chair again, scraping the wall. You're an actor, says Manning, correct? I was, yes, but my new position leaves no time for such pursuits. Of course, Manning tells him, but I understand that prior to your cultural liaison days, you were building a promising career within the professional theater here. That's a stretch, Manning knows, but he's trying to ingratiate himself, and it works. The critics seem impressed, says Utley. I was starting to get consistently favorable press, but civic duty called. Might one say, then, that given your background coupled with your new position, you're thoroughly connected to the theater scene in Chicago? Oh my, yes, Victor squares his shoulders. And beyond. Manning again flips open his notes. Excellent. The reason I ask is that I may have use for a contact within the theater world. I'm sniffing out a future story that could turn into something of an expose. It involves a prominent figure, a local woman who's been getting some publicity recently, who I have reason to believe may be an imposter, a professional actress. If that's the case, do you think you'd be able to help me identify her? Utley leans forward on his elbows, beads Manning with a stare, and lowers his voice. If she's ever worked in the Midwest, I probably know her. When I'm ready to get the investigation rolling, can I enlist your help? Utley leans closer. My hard-earned background deserves compensation. Manning leans back easily in his chair. He doesn't bother to hush his words. This is business. I can't authorize that, but my editor can. I'll speak to him. This could be an important story, and we need a source. Manning closes his notebook. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.